Okay, so in this example you see that we have a projection drawing, and what we're going to do here is we're going to also create a section that's going through it. The reason I know it's a section, and in this case it's going to be a full section, is that you can see the phantom line that's running in between it. So in this example we're going to find out how to do hatch patterns. We're going to look at some sections, and we should bring in our title block and adjust it. One thing I will tell you is that our title block that we did create is in inches. This drawing is in millimeters, so I know that there's a difference between the two, but the concept is still the same depending on what title block you have. So let's get started on drawing the front view or the left view. Let's start with a circle that has a diameter. I'll click here, and this circle will be large, so whenever you type in the diameter, which is 110, you may not actually see it. I'm just going to zoom the extents and make it appear. Let's go ahead and create our other circles that's on the inside. The next one has a diameter of 88. The next circle that we have is on the inside here, and it has a diameter of 60. So I'll create that circle with a diameter of 60. Kind of walking ourselves in a little bit more. Our next diameter will be at 42. Then we got a few more diameters to create. Let's create a circle with a diameter of 36. Another one that has a diameter of 32. And then finally we have one that has a diameter of 20. Okay, so now we have all our circles created. Let's go ahead and create our pattern that's going around on the outside. So I'll create a circle with a diameter at this quadrant, and the size of that circle, or the diameter of that circle, is 8. Let's go ahead and use the polar array. Select our circle and then go to our center point, and we're going to go up to our ribbon and tell it that we have 8 items and escape. Alright, so next we're going to start constructing our right side view. What I'm going to do first is that I'm going to take a look at one of these, which is this one. And this is kind of a special one. It shows that hidden line that's on the back side of our section. So what I want to do is I'm just going to change the color of that one to red for now. Then I'll come back and adjust it later. This thing is symmetrical. You can see that this circle is in line with this one and so forth. So I'm going to create half of it, and then I can use the mirror command to create the other part. Let's start with a construction line, horizontal. And what I'm going to do is start at this top quadrant. I'll keep clicking the quadrants going down. I'm purposely staying away from the center. I just only want to deal with the quadrants. And this will be the only center that I will select. Here is the bottom portion of my shape. I'm going to give myself a little room away from my view I just created. And I'm going to start and I'm going to create a line going straight down to where it's perpendiculars, or turn your or your ortho on and come down to that perpendicular. Let's go ahead and trim off this top portion. Okay, so I'm going to use the copy command in order to create my other lines. Copy, select this line, pick a base point here. I'm going to make sure I'm going to the left, and once again make sure your ortho is on. I'm going to type in 6, enter, 8, enter, 16, enter, 23, enter, 42.5. Enter, and then escape. Okay, so let's go ahead and kind of clean this up a little bit and make it into something that's a little bit manageable. Let's use trim, and I'm just going to take away all of these lines, and I'm going to set them up by using the cutting edge, so I don't want to have to trim all the way and walk it back over here. So I'll select cutting edges. I'll select these two lines, enter, and then I want to trim off all of these lines here. So I'm going to do one click above it and come straight down and trim it off, and here on the back side as well. So one click below it, go straight above it, and one more click. Now I can hit the escape button. Okay, so now let's start trimming off some of this to make it look like how we want it. We can see that the thickness of this is indeed 6, so that's going to be that first line here. So I'm going to trim this line back until I get to that portion. These next two lines are going to be related to this circle, so I'm going to trim those also back to that point. Alright, this next line is sitting at 8. So I'm going to leave that one alone for right now. I'll come to the next line, which is at 16. This is going to start making my first hump on the outside, or step, I should say. So what I need to do is, you can see that that step is right here, and it goes down. So I'm going to trim this line right to my 6. And I'll trim this line to here. Let's walk this line backwards by trimming here and here. Finally, this is the part that where it steps up. So I'm going to trim this line going up to this portion. Okay, so now I'll come down to my next part of this. So if I'm looking at this line, that's that step. This one is going to be the next one. So that line is in line with this one. So I'm going to take this line and kind of create it back to this point. This is going to be where that line steps to here. I'll trim it off here. Then I'll walk this one up. Okay, so I do have a circle that's sitting at 36 in the back, and that's going to be this next line. And so if we're kind of counting this up, this is our center line going down. This is our diameter that's sitting at 20. This one is the next one at 32. And this one is the one that goes to 36. So if I'm doing the one that's going to 36, which is the next line here, I'll trim it here and here. Now my very long line here, I will walk it down to here. Cleaning this up a little bit more, now I'll go back to this line that's sitting at 6, and I will trim it all the way up to that location. Now I can clearly see where my other line is at. I can trim here and create the step here. This line that's 20 is going right through at a bore, so I'm going to trim it here. Trim this line going down like here. And we can see the general shape of our object that we're trying to create. Let's go ahead and escape out of the trim command. I'll delete this line. Now I'll use the mirror command. Select all of these objects and go from this endpoint to this endpoint. I have a bunch of different segments in here from the mirror. So I'll use overkill. And I'm only going to select my right side view here. And I'll select OK. So now you can see that those 3 overlapping segments are now one. So that's a completed line, this one, and this one. I'll move this a little bit closer. Next, I'm going to insert in my title block. And I'm going to use the old way of using insert. So I'm going to type in the word classic. And you can see that it will appear, and I'll use classic insert. Let's browse. I'll use a B-size title block and select Open. I want to make sure that I have this unchecked, the scale, and everything else is unchecked, and select OK. You can see that now my title block is super small on the inside here, and my layers should appear here. Once again, I have that same problem that I do not have my center layer here, so I can either add it with the block edit, but what I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to open it. So I'm going to type in open. I'll choose my B-size title block, select open. Underneath the layer properties of this one, I will select New Layer, Center. Let's make it cyan, or color number 4. Let's go ahead and change the line type. Load. I'm going to choose Center 2. Then I'll select it here. Close. Now I want you to save this. So I'm just using a regular save. And then you can close this dialog box. I'm sorry, you can close the drawing altogether. Alright, so back here, it does not automatically update this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that title block. I'll use the purge command. I'm just typing in PU for purge. Open the dialog box. I have everything checked. I'm just going to tell it, and make sure that you have these two checked as well. I can take off the confirm each one if I don't want to step through all of these. Then select purge all. You can see that the little pluses next to these that I had objects associated with are gone. Let's go ahead and close this. Let's use insert again, and I'm using the classic insert command. I'll browse. Use my B-size title block this time, open it, make sure none of this is checked, and select OK. Now when I select in the drop down, that layer should appear. Okay, so now I want to adjust the size of my title block to make it fit my border. I'm sorry, I want to adjust the size of my title block in order to make it fit my shape. When adjusting my title block, I will refer back to this document. And this has a good list of what I want to use as scale factors. Since I'm using a metric one, I'll be looking into this column. So select your title block. While I'm on the edge of my title block here, I'll do a right click and choose Properties. Now I can take a look at the scale X, scale Y, and scale Z. I can change each of these numbers to 2. And I can see on my screen if that image is going to fit inside of my title block. I'll make it 8. And you can see that I'm still a little bit short on it. Let's go with 16. And that should be enough to fit my image on the inside of. Okay, so I'm going to move these objects to the inside. Let's go ahead and turn our ortho off just so we can move it freely. What I like to do here is fill in my title block, since now I know my scale factor. Remember the command for that is ATE, enter. Select your title block. Project name is going to be example 2. And the scale for this one is 1 space colon space 16. Once again, make sure that you do fill out the name in this box. So the first thing I do after I bring in my title block is I want my line types to adjust. So you can see that this is super tiny. If I zoom in, I can get the dash lines. I'll type in LTS, and that stands for line type scale. And then I'll adjust this number to match whatever I scale my title block up to. So when I type in 16, you can see that now these hidden lines are coming more into view. Next thing I like to do is start putting in any hatches or center lines or center marks that I have to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is deal with the hatches. Let's go with hatch. I'll pick on the inside of this one, and you can see that because of the spacing is so tight that it almost looks like it's solid. And I'll select in each one of these boxes. Inside the hatch pattern, under here is what controls the scale. If I make that number 16, you will see that now my hatch will become more clear. I'm going to space it out just a little bit more, just because the closer those lines are, the tighter things are. Okay, so I'm going to adjust this and make it 24. Let's go ahead and close hatch. I can select the hatch, and instead of switching up here, I also have the option to switch it or control it in my properties dialog box where it says layer. Select the drop down, go ahead and put it on the hatch layer. Let's go ahead and close that. Let's go ahead and adjust this line. And we're going to make this, instead of being on the hidden layer, make it on the center layer. The red line that's on the inside, make sure that you escape anytime out of you change your layer, so the escape button. Select this red line and put it back on by layer. Now with that line still selected in the properties, I'll select the drop down and I'll put it on the hidden layer. Okay, now at this portion I'm going to start putting in my center lines and center marks. So the first thing I like to do is go ahead and type in center layer. And then I'm going to change this to the center layer. So just type in the word center. Switch over to annotate, and I'll use center mark, and I'll select that circle. You can see that since we're using metric, that these do not extend out very far. And if you remember from the lecture that there's a command that controls how far these go. So I'll type it, center EXE, and that stands for the extension. And I usually like to make the extension on any metric drawings anywhere between 3 to 5. For this example, I'll use 3, enter. Now I'll go ahead and delete this center mark, and this will show you the difference. So next time I use center mark and I select this circle, you can see how long those lines are extending beyond my circle. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select this center mark, select the square here at the bottom quadrant, and put it in that location. I'll do the same for the top one. Select that one and put it at the center of this one. In my properties, I have a top extension and a bottom extension. I'll make both of those 0. Escape twice to clear it. Next, let's use polar array to array that around. So I'll go to polar array, select my center line that I just created here, or center mark. My center point of rotation is going to be at the center. Change your items to 8 and close. You want to make sure that you don't have the associativity turned on, otherwise you're going to have to come back and explode. You can see that this line and this line I will not need because my line will be going through it, my cutting line will be going through it, so I'm going to delete those two. Switch back and annotate and go ahead and create a center mark along that circle. I'll do the exact same thing that I did to the outside circle here, so I'm just going to select and pull these squares on top of that square. Then I'll change the extensions on the top and the bottom both to 0. Once again, the reason why I did that is that you can see that section line is going to go right through the middle here, and it's going to kind of block it. Let's go over to this side. Let's go ahead and create our center lines. I'll select this line and this line. Go down to here, select my center lines between here and here. And one more center line between these two lines. I'm going to extend this back, so I'll select my center line, select the square, and put it at this midpoint. Okay, to adjust these lines, it's really typical that you do see the dash in between them. And I know in the drawing that it does not show that. So I'm going to select this line and the bottom one as well. And I'm just going to kind of zoom into the bottom. The line type scale in here is going to adjust them just for those two lines. So I'm going to change them to 0.75. And I'm still not seeing it. Let's take a look at 0.5. You can see that that gap does appear. Just hit escape twice to get out of that. And you can see on both of them, I do have that center mark going right through them, or the center line with the dash in them. Okay, all of my center lines are done now. This time I can do my dimensions. So the first thing I do is go down to the dimension drop down and choose dimension. Let's go ahead and set up our dimension style. So I'm using the standard, modify. And once again, starting over here, I always like to give this just a little bit more gap. So 0.5 would be enough. I'm already creating center marks. I went through the hassle of doing that, so I'll turn these center marks to none. And remember that this will control that dim center command that we used in one of the examples. So if I turn this to none, I'm no longer allowed to use that command. Text. Let's go ahead and make it smaller. So I'm just going to type in 0.125. Underneath the fit, I adjusted my title block to 16. So I have to make this number also 16. Primary units. I'm using decimal. In this case, most of my dimensions are whole numbers. So I'll select 0 here. Okay. And then close. Let's start putting our dimensions on the back side here. So I'll start with a linear dimension and put it at this endpoint and at that endpoint. Drag away from it and place my dimension. Do the same here at the top, so I'll select that endpoint down to that endpoint. I could have used the alternative method by selecting enter. I'm just going to drag this away at a comfortable distance, and that looks fine to me. Do one more dimension here in the front. That endpoint to that endpoint, and place it here. I'll select all three of these dimensions that I just created. And what I want to do is that I want to put the diameter symbol in front of them. Over here, I'll scroll down until I see the word text override. And I got two options of way I can do this. I can either put it in the text override, or I can make all those have a prefix. I'll show you the prefix option. So when you see dim prefix, I'll type in %% and that stands for diameter. Once I hit the enter button, you're going to see that all of those will get it on the inside. If I didn't want to use that option, underneath the text override, I can type in %% less than greater than. The less than greater than symbol just says use the original dimensions or use the AutoCAD dimensions and then put %%. If I hit enter, you're going to see it's going to give me the exact same thing. Let's go ahead and hit escape twice to get out of that. Now we're going to create our baseline dimension here at the top. Let's create a linear dimension. And remember, baseline goes from the first one that I start off of. So if I select this endpoint first to this endpoint, and I'll have the width of this one. And it looks like I meant to go there. So I'm going to select this dimension, select the grip, and put that grip on that endpoint. Let's choose the baseline option. And what this is going to allow me to do is just select this endpoint and then this endpoint. You can see that my dimensions are kind of running off the screen. And we're off my title block. So I'm going to adjust these at the bottom, and then from that point I'll make my adjustment. So I have a baseline dimension here at the bottom. Remember, the first one is select your linear. I'm going to go from this endpoint to this endpoint. Place my dimension. Choose baseline. And select that endpoint. Okay, so one of the first things you want to do is see if I have enough room to move this down. If not, I can adjust the spacing between here as well. One way of doing it is I can easily grab a dimension, select the grip on the arrows, and come down a distance. If you want them all to do the same thing, you have a adjust space dimension. I can select this one as my base dimension, and then these two are the ones that's going to be spaced off of that. Enter, and then I have to give it a distance in between them. So for this example, I'll make it, let's see what 5 looks like. And you can see that 5 will pull them all down equally spaced. And here at the bottom, I can do the exact same thing. So I can adjust the space, select the dimension, select the ones that are, let's do that again. Select the dimension, and then select the one that I want to move with it. Enter, and then put 5. And you can see that now I have that space in between that one as well. Okay, so everything is done on this view. Let's go ahead and take a look at our other view. I'll use diameter dimensions. Let's go ahead and space this one here. And I can hit the enter button if I have a lot of these instead of going back up each time. Put my dimension of 60 on this one. And I'm just hitting enter to come back and repeat the last command. This is the one that's at 20. And I have a dimension here. Okay, so now let's go ahead and start creating our arrowheads. What I like to usually do is start with a polyline, or start with the line actually. And I'll go right from the center turn ortho on, and then I want to go up a certain height. In this case, it looks like 62 would be fine. Then I want to go to the left, a distance of 10. Next, we're going to create our arrowheads. And remember, there's 3 ways that I can create an arrowhead. First way is if I draw a line, go in this direction, and let's make it 5. And let's make the height of this 3. So I'm just going to draw a line vertically, 3. Then I will move this one from this endpoint, or midpoint, sorry, to that endpoint. Okay, I have 3 ways that I typically will create an arrow, and you can choose whichever way you want to do. I'm going to copy this line up to here. Okay, the first way I can do this is that there's an old command called solid. I'll type it in. And if I pick these endpoints just in a counterclockwise option, come back to the original, you can see that it will give me an endpoint. Let's go ahead and escape out of the command. Alright, it will give me an arrow. If I move this, you can see that I have some benefits and some disadvantages. I need an endpoint right here in the middle in order to move that to that arrowhead or to this endpoint. But I don't have that. I do have it with the line that's left over there, and it's one of those things that it does create 2 separate things. So you can see my original lines are here, and I have these. Option number 2 that I recommend that you not go with, but it's still an option if you have nothing else to use, is that you can complete the triangle here and use a hatch. That is solid. And go ahead and close the hatch. It does have its benefits. Once again, I can move this and separate them. And I do have a midpoint here on the back side of that, which is a benefit that I can use. One of the preferred ways of using it is you can use a polyline. I can select the start point, and then on the command line you can see where it says width. Select the word width. My starting width will be 3. I want to go this direction. My ending width, you can see, is going to already be set to 3, but I'm going to change that to 0. And now you can see that I can go this direction and tell it to be 5 long. And then escape. So this is kind of the preferred way I like to use and create arrowheads. And I'll do it again when I create the one that's actually over here. Let's go ahead and delete these options. Let's go ahead and use polyline. This is my starting point. I'll go down and select the word width. My starting width in this case will be 3. Enter. My ending width will be 0. Enter. And now I can point this direction and make sure that you have your ortho turned on and tell it how far to go. I'll tell it I want it to go 5 this way, and then hit escape. So now you have your arrowhead. Let's go ahead and mirror the arrowhead and this line. So I'm going to mirror all of 3 of these objects, so I have an arrowhead and 2 lines. I'm just going to go right across these 2 endpoints. Let me do that again. I hit the enter button a little too quick, and it does happen to me from time to time. So let me go to endpoint, and then answer that question by hitting enter. I want to join 3 lines together, and do not join your arrowhead. So when I use the join command, I only want to join this line, this one, and this one. I just thought of something I need to do before I do this. Let's go ahead and escape. Go back to join, and only join these 2 lines together first. That way I can make that one continuous line, and now use join and select your other lines. Once again, do not join your arrowheads with this. Let's go ahead and select our arrowheads and our lines. I'll go ahead and put that on the phantom layer. I also like to adjust the width of this, so that's why I made it into a polyline. So if you select it, you're going to find global width. Let's make that 1. You can see that your lines will get thicker. Let's go ahead and put the text on the front, and I'll use single line text. It's asking me to pick a starting point. I'm going to choose justify. I'm going to choose the middle center option, and then I'll click here. Now I want my text height to be 0.2, but I have to multiply that by the scale factor in order to get it to be the right size. So I'll open my calculator. So actually, while I'm in this command, I'll use the calculator instead of opening a calculator. And you can remember that it's just apostrophe CAL, enter. My expression will be 0.2, that's the height that I want my text to be, multiplied by the scale factor, in this case is 16. And once I hit enter, AutoCAD will figure that out for me and tell me that the height is 3.2. I have 0 for my rotation. Now I can type in a capital A. Remember, don't hit the escape button. Do a left click somewhere and then escape. Let's go ahead and move this text, and I'm going to use the grip so you can select the text, select the grip point, and let's go ahead and turn our ortho off just to move it clearly or freely. Okay, I need to mirror this to the other side. And with text, when you mirror it, it actually does not flip upside down. So I go to mirror, select my text, enter, and I'm going to go right across these two endpoints again. I'll answer my question of no just by hitting enter. And you can see that my text will be at the top. Now for my text that's down here at the bottom. Once again, I'll use single line text. It's asking me to pick a start point or a middle point in this case because it remembered the last one I did. I'll just click here. The text height, it assumes that I want the same text height that I just did. In this case, it's going to be a little bit different, so I'm going to go apostrophe CAL, enter. The text height I want for this one to be a little bit bigger, so let's make it 0.25. And let's multiply that by the scale factor, which is 16, enter. It's asking me for a rotation. It's 0, so just hit enter. Now it's ready to type. In order to put the underline underneath your text, start with %%U. I'm going to add a space, and then I'll start typing in section A-A, and then I like to put another space at the end of it. Remember that we're using single line text, so left click somewhere, and then hit escape. Go ahead and select your text and put it on the correct layer, which is going to be on the text layer. I'm going to move this underneath it just by clicking on the text, clicking the center grip, and then moving it somewhere underneath my drawing. Okay, I have one more thing to do is put an angle dimension on this one. And if you don't want to switch back to the annotation tab and I'm on the home tab, your dimensions are also located here. So I can use the angular one. I'll select this line and this line that's on my section. I'll place it here. Make sure that you're not in any command. Double click that text. I usually hit the home button on my keyboard. Then I'll type in 8 times with a space and close. Let's go ahead and label our dimension for our diameters. So I use a diameter dimension. Select this circle, place it here, double click. Go ahead and hit the home button. Type in your 8 times with a space. You can left click anywhere you want, on the outside of it, and then hit the escape button. Okay, so that should be all of our dimensions that we need. And we figured out everything that we need on this video. Once again, make sure that you have your title block filled in. And I want to thank you for watching this one.